Hey everyone, how's it going? I know it hasn't been that long since my last video on Dawn of Sorrow, but when I was trying to come up with ideas for what to do for that game, one that I considered was beating the game with only the RPG, meaning the rocket-propelled grenade, even though that's not actually what it stands for, so I'm just gonna call it the rocket launcher. But the point is, this is one of the few realistic modern weapons in the Castlevania series. I considered making that my original run, but unlike the handgun in Aria, which came with a severe handicap, the RPG is one of the strongest weapons in the game, probably the whole series, and you can't even legitimately obtain it until after you beat the game, so instead, I figured I'd play the game with it, but more of as an easy mode run and upload it later on as a sort of bonus. Anyway, I really wanted to do this video because, the fact that a rocket launcher is a weapon in a Castlevania game just blows my mind, and I just love the idea of Soma Cruz running around the castle with a freaking rocket launcher just destroying everything in his path. In Aria of Sorrow, you had the positron rifle, a futuristic laser weapon, but I guess someone at Konami probably thought it would be too redundant to have that in both games. Or sometime after Aria of Sorrow came out, someone at Konami thought that maybe a futuristic laser weapon would be a little too futuristic for 2035. To be fair, 2035 did seem a lot more futuristic in 2003 than it does today. If you ever wanted to play a game where you get to go around an ancient-looking environment with a modern or futuristic weapon tearing through everything in your way, this and Aria of Sorrow are some of the best games you could play. But before we go any further, I want to give a shout out to this video's sponsor. This video is sponsored by Manscaped. For those of you that haven't heard of it, Manscaped is the premier brand for men's hygiene products with an amazing selection of some of the best products for taking care of your smelly man parts. In fact, I can even show you some of their stuff right here in this Perfect Package 4.0 that they sent me. So here we got the lawnmower, which is an electric waterproof trimmer made with advanced skin-safe technology. Very nice. Here we got the Crop Preserver and Crop Reviver. All you gotta do is apply the preserver to your lower areas after a shower for BO protection, and the reviver to refresh that area when you need to. And last but not least, we have the Magic Mat, filled with some funny stuff and hair designs for, well, you know. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, for a limited time, you also get all this, plus the Shed travel bag and a pair of anti-chafing boxer briefs. All this stuff can be yours if you go to Manscaped's website right now, using the link down below in the description. By using the promo code Gnarly, you will get 20% off, plus free international shipping, plus 2 free bonus items. I want to give a big thank you to Manscaped for sponsoring this video, and now, let's get back to the video. So, I start the game, create my save file, and quite literally blast my way through the tutorial. Once again, ignoring Alucard's knife and instead using this rocket launcher I found in my pocket. All 3 of the enemies go down in one hit, and I then make my way through the castle where it's the same deal. The first enemy to not go down in one hit is the boss, the Flying Armor, who goes down in 3 hits. After that, there's not much reason for me to stick around in the Lost Village, so I immediately head to the Wizardry Lab, where it's more the same, although there are a few enemies in here that take more than one hit, those being the Creature and the Golem, which take 2. I will say, one thing that is kind of annoying about the RPG is that the hitbox seems to be a few pixels in front of Soma's head. I suppose that's one of the drawbacks, but it does make this weapon less than ideal for close range, and it also makes knocking out candles and light bulbs harder too. But anyway, the Balor fight, again, is a complete joke with this weapon. My rockets are doing 125 damage, which is even more than they were doing to the Flying Armor. Probably because Balor is weak against Slash and the RPG is a Slash attribute weapon for some reason. I do get hit a couple of times, and I even get hit by an attack that I never saw him use before, but this fight is still a breeze. He goes down after exactly 8 hits. So, I go to the Garden of Madness where, once again, it's more enemies dying in just one hit, but it's not long before I go to the Dark Chapel, and here, I'm really starting to see the rocket launcher's true uses. Those flying enemies that were giving me so much trouble before are now incredibly easy to take out. Just wait for them to start their attack, then jump and hit them. The same logic also does apply to the dancers, but there's so many and they provide so little EXP, I recommend just ignoring them. I get to Dimitri, and this fight is also a joke. His projectiles are hardly an issue now because I no longer have to worry about getting close to him to hit him, and after every couple of hits, he still flies back. Not to mention, I'm now doing 125 damage. The only thing that happens is that after I defeat him, I still get hit by his ball attack head on, which hits 4 times, but it's not enough to kill, and by this point the fight is over anyway, though I'd have been salty if that attack did kill me. And as you all probably know, it's only a few rooms later where I have to fight Malphas, and this fight is even easier than Dimitri. Even though my RPG isn't doing as much damage, his attacks are still extremely easy to dodge. At this point, I figure my RPG is doing so much damage I don't even need to put in the effort to dodge, and it seems to be an effective strategy here. This boss gives me plenty of time to hit him, and his attacks really aren't doing a lot, and he goes down in only about a dozen hits. I keep going, and the regular enemies aren't getting any harder. Most of them are still going down in just 1 hit. Even the bigger enemies like the giant knights and tree golems both go down in just 2 hits. The next boss, Dario, is another extremely easy boss. Once again, I don't have to worry about getting close to him, and my rockets are doing even more to him than they were to most of the enemies. 120 damage to be exact. He does land a couple of hits, but they hardly put a scratch on me, and he goes down in a baker's dozen hits. That's 13 if you didn't know. Now, the Demon Guest House is still easy, but I am starting to notice more and more enemies that take more than 1 hit to take out, like the Persephones and the Killer Clowns. I pick up the War Fatigues while here, and before too long I get to the Puppet Master. And this is the first boss to actually give me any real trouble and take more than 1 attempt. I say this because, remember how in my Fist Only video the mannequins that go into the Iron Maidens took 2 hits to knock out? Well, they don't actually take damage. No matter which weapon you're using, the mannequins will always go down in 2 hits. For my Fists Only run, that was great, but here that's not so great because of how slow the RPG fires. In order to hit the mannequins with the RPG, your timing has to be perfect. Thankfully, the weapon is still doing a lot of damage to the main body itself, and the dolls are hardly a problem because the rockets explode and damage enemies around them when they hit. To the Puppet Master, they're doing exactly 100 damage, and after exactly 30 hits and a single magic seal, the Puppet Master goes down. Now, this time I know which order to fight the bosses in, and I won't make the mistake of fighting Gurgoth before Rahab. I immediately head to the Subterranean Hell to fight Rahab, and it goes about how I expected. It's extremely easy. Once again, my rockets are doing 100 damage, and here I don't need to worry about chasing him down because of the range my weapon provides. All I need to know is which side he's going to surface on, and also to make sure that he's on screen. This boss also has less than half as much HP as the Puppet Master, 1200 to be exact, so yeah, you can do the math. This fight only takes about 2 minutes. With my new ability to walk underwater, I make my way through the dungeon, and none of the enemies here are giving me any trouble. I'm not exactly sure how my RPG is able to work underwater, but I mean, I'm not going to complain. I head back up to the Dark Chapel, go through there to get to the Condemned Tower, and climb all the way to the top to fight Gurgoth. And this is another normally difficult fight that is a complete joke with the power of the RPG. For one thing, my attacks are doing even more to him than the last 2 bosses, but also I no longer have to worry about bumping into him with my ability to hit him from a distance. The only attack of his that I actually have to worry about is the laser, but once he's done with that, I can easily slide out of the way. I also love how for his gas attacks, the rocket explodes on contact with the clouds and scatters them everywhere. When he uses his stomp attack and sends us both plummeting, I can't hit him with the rockets because they just fly over him before they get far enough. And a lot of people in my last video told me that there's a trick you can do where after he breaks the floor by using your falling kick on him, it'll deal a ton of damage if you hover for long enough. But I recorded this video before I uploaded that video, so I didn't know about it at the time. Either way, the fight is still really easy. His second phase isn't that much different from the first, and after a handful of rocket blasts to the feet, he goes down. But anyway, once I'm done with that, I climb back up the tower again to go to the Curse Clock Tower with all the moving platforms, spikes, Medusa heads, and so on. I don't really bother with any of the enemies except the little flying devils because I just want to get some revenge for how much trouble they gave me in the last run. But anyway, we get to Saphir, who is, as half the comments in my last video pointed out, a parody of Dio from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which, looking back, I'm not sure how I failed to make that connection, but much like Gurgoth, with a projectile, this fight is a total joke. With the ability to stand further away, his attacks are much easier to dodge, and even his time-stopping attacks where he counters, I can dodge because I have plenty of time before he reaches me, and he doesn't have a lot of health either. This fight doesn't even last a single minute. After that, it's time to head back to the Subterranean Hell and into the Silenced Ruins, which is full of weak but also pretty annoying enemies, and the Bat Company boss, which is actually kind of difficult, mainly due to the way it flies around, and given its size, it's kind of hard to dodge. This is basically just another endurance round. Just keep hitting it as much as you can and hope it dies before you do. This is one of the few boss battles in this run where I actually have to use a potion to survive long enough to beat it, but it goes down on the first attempt all the same. Now, with the Bat Company Soul, I can go to the final boss area and fight Dario, but I still want to get the true ending, which means I'm going to need to beat Paranoia first, which means I'm going to need the proper souls to get to him, those being the Killer Clown, the Ukobach, and the Axe Armor souls. This is the only time I'm actually going to have to grind during this run, and the Killer Clown soul takes a lot longer than I was hoping, but thankfully the Ukobach and Axe Armor ones don't take long at all. So I get to him and it doesn't go quite as well as I was hoping. A lot of the same problems I was facing in the last run are prevalent here. In fact, in his second form, it might actually be even harder to hit him because of the delay before and after I use my attack. This is the second boss that takes more than one attempt. So I attempt him again and it goes about the same, but at least I'm able to hold out long enough to beat him because of the potions I bought. I also screw up the magic seal for the first time in a while, which, you know, is fun. A lot of people commented on my videos saying that there are ROM hacks that do the magic seals for you, which I am aware of, but for my challenge videos, I don't like using ROM hacks that change or remove parts of the game. I mean, yeah, I do think magic seals are stupid, but they are still a part of the game, and for that reason, I'm going to do them as if I were playing the game normally. But yeah, it takes a few tries, but eventually I do get it and beat Paranoia. Now from here, I could go straight to Agni, but because it's not too much of a detour, I decide to go and get the Dracula's Tunic and Megingjord. And then, I fly through the spikes and get to the end of the pinnacle to fight Agni. Now, Agni isn't what I would call hard, but it is kind of frustrating, and I say that because I really do not understand how his hitbox is supposed to work with the rockets. In the last run, for as hard as this boss was, I never had much of a problem hitting him, but here, the rockets only seem to hit when they feel like it. If not, they just go right through him. I'm also having a lot more trouble dodging his claw attacks, and yeah, I lose the first attempt. By the second one, I figured out how to dodge most of his attacks, but my rockets are still randomly missing. I think it has something to do with his nails, but I'm not entirely sure. It also takes considerably longer than the other bosses of this run, about 6 minutes, but I am able to get him on my second attempt. So I get that cutscene, which I skip, I do the whole thing with Dimitri and the Mina doppelganger, and then go through the Mine of Judgment to fight Death. And it pretty much goes how I expect it to. Not too terribly difficult, but not really easy either. This is mainly because with this being the last stretch of the game, even with all the power provided by the rocket launcher, it's starting to balance out, and its weaknesses are really starting to show, though that's less true here than it was during the Agni fight because Death is a much easier target to hit, and his attacks are easier to dodge with me being able to hit him from far away and him not moving as fast. His second phase isn't much harder either. Thanks to all the practice I got in my last run, I pretty much have his attack pattern figured out. However, I do get confirmation that I did indeed get lucky with the magic seal during my fist-only run, because this takes me several attempts. I don't even understand what I'm doing wrong here. I even practiced doing it in the menu, but despite me having it nailed there, the game just doesn't seem to want to accept my inputs. Considering that this is against such a powerful boss, it really makes what is normally a minor inconvenience a freaking nightmare, and I even have to waste some potions against him too. After, I don't even know how many tries, I finally do get it and am able to beat him on my first attempt. Okay, now that that's out of the way, let's move on to the final area, the Abyss. There are a lot of enemies here, and at first I try to just ignore them, but that doesn't go well, so I instead reset the game and go through guns blazing, which is still a pain because of how many flying and jumping enemies there are here, and most of them take quite a lot of hits before going down. Eventually, I do get to Abaddon, and it's pretty much the same deal here as it was in the last video. Abaddon just kinda hops around and waves his baton, commanding his swarm of locusts while I just fire rockets at him. I already talked about how annoying this boss is because of how hard these attacks are to dodge, but thankfully he doesn't have a lot of HP and my attacks are doing a good amount, meaning this is just another endurance test, same deal as before. The biggest problem, once again, is the magic seal, but I seem to have gotten better at it, and doing it only takes me a couple of attempts. I am able to beat Abaddon with my second magic seal on my second attempt. I go through what little is left of the dungeon and on to the final boss, the Menace. Now, just like before, the first phase is a complete joke. While I don't have the Medusa head soul, I don't really need it because with the rate of fire of my weapon, being able to hover in place wouldn't really make a huge difference as opposed to me just jumping up every time, which is what I'm doing. It's just a repeating cycle of jump, attack, then get out of the way when he's about to attack. I get to the second phase and, it does not go too well. You'd think this would actually be easy, with the rockets being able to explode on contact, allowing me to deal damage to his weak spots even when they don't directly hit, but the main issue here, much like in the last video, is the Pac-Men or leeches or Langoliers or whatever they're supposed to be. Despite me having one of the most powerful weapons in the game that is dealing damage to them in the triple digits, they still don't go down in one hit. Not to mention, they're doing 120 damage, and given their speed and small size, hitting them isn't exactly easy. In fact, I may even go far as to say that taking them out with my fist was easier. And for that reason, this is the only boss in the game that takes me more than 2 attempts. My level at this boss is 36, and my HP total is 540, which is about average for this point in the game. After about my 4th or 5th attempt, I instead decide to just ignore the leeches and just play as aggressively as I can. Taking out the spot on his knee is very easy because of the rocket's explosion, like I talked about earlier. I can easily hit him by just jumping and shooting him from the ground. The head, however, is kind of a different story. In my last video, I already talked about how when you hit him, the skull closes, shielding him for a brief moment, which is actually not an issue here because of how slow the RPG is. And even when I do hit him when the skull is closed, the explosion seems to ignore that. What is still an issue, though, is being in the right spot to hit him while dodging the leeches and his arm attacks. And I also can't really explain why, but launching the rocket at his head and seeing those points is just so rewarding. It makes me want to say, boom, headshot, every time I do it. Other than that, there's really not a lot to say. Just dodge the leeches and attack him as much as you can. And after about 5 minutes, he goes down. So, how easily can you beat Dawn of Sorrow with only the RPG? Very easily. At the time I beat the final boss, I was level 36, and my total playtime logged by the game was 2 hours and 43 minutes. Not exactly speedrun numbers, and considering the times I died and had to reset, I'd say maybe add another 15 minutes or so I'd say about 3 hours. This was kind of a shorter video and not really much of a challenge. Like I said, I mostly did it because the concept alone made me want to do it, even if it probably wasn't going to be hard. I mean, how many other Castlevania games can you say you've been able to beat with only a rocket launcher? Anyways, guys, be sure to let me know what you think. Be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe. Consider leaving a Ko-Fi donation if you want to support me financially. And until the next video, I will see you all later.